He's an All Black, a captain, a law student, and now the most important role ever, a parent. Today we talk to Conrad about resilience, leadership and bullying, and why nothing prepares you for stepping on a rogue Lego in the dark. Welcome Conrad, awesome to have you here. To start us off, how has becoming a parent changed your perspective on the environment kids grow up in?
Cheers Shane, good to be here. How is being a parent? I think, most people, that have gone through it, you realise parenting changes everything, like you think of certain moments in your life where your perspective on everything changes, your outlook, how you approach things, and it's not when for me, it's not when I won a big game of rugby or even a Rugby World Cup, it was becoming a parent like that. That's just totally changes your outlook, your whole sense of, and I think to be an elite level sport, you have to be quite selfish, but then you come to parenting and it's just this whole mindset change about living for someone else and total care and protection for someone else, which you think about with your wife, but not quite the same, I think everyone would say, as when you have a child. So that certainly changed my outlook on whether it was sport or life in general, and understanding the care and the responsibility you have, because you want to offer a great life for your your child. And I think it's impacted to a large extent where you've come from yourself. So I feel very fortunate in the way I was brought up, and I think that had a big impact on me, that you're in this crazy world and there's all these things to worry about, but the least you can do is just that direct relationship, be a good parent, as your parents have been for you.
So how many kids do you have?
I've got a couple. I've got a boy and a girl. So they're just coming through primary school, and that's so you sort of have that early stage where you don't know what you're doing, and everything's a little bit scary. I feel like at the moment, especially in like Taranaki, there's some great schools and things like that, but we're also, our kids are entering those teenage years where you don't have, the reality is you don't have the same influence and control over your kids, because you want them to socialise and they go out and spend more time away from you, which is good because it's hard work bringing up young kids, but as they leave the nest, you've got to let go, and you've got to trust the lessons that the lessons that you've given them, and the learnings is going to equip them for the world, because you're not going to be able to spoon feed them anymore.
Absolutely.
You've got to trust them now to be in that outside world and look after themselves. Yeah,
it's a different beast these days too, with regards to what kids are exposed to.
Exactly.
And the things that are out there that you're worried. Like we've got older daughters as well, me and my wife, and we've been through that teenage period where it's quite tricky. Yeah. And your parenting has to change. You sort of have to change. But awesome. So how has fatherhood reshaped the way you think about bullying and emotional safety?
It's just something you talk about the world that your kids are in, and I think it's just one thing you can't control, and you know that your kids are going to school, they're going to sports teams, are socialising, and there's just this unknown of the relationships that they're having with other kids, and you want that, but there's that constant fear of, is that a healthy relationship that they're forming, and is their friendship group really getting the best out of them, or and you hear stories and you're well aware of bullying and just how harmful that can be, and you can't protect them. So I think, like I said before, you come back to that, well, how can I equip my kids to deal with it themselves, because I can't be there, and I don't want to be there all the time, like that's for them, that's their life they've got to lead, but I know that I can teach them really good things to be really strong in yourself, and that, so if they are in that position where someone is, bullying them, teasing them, having a go at them, that they know how to deal with it, and that's a hard thing, and it's not like I'm feeling real confident, I'm still worried about it. You still have that fear, and as we sort of said before, it's only going to increase because they're teenagers and they're sort of opportunities and experiences, and that network of people that they're going to meet is only going to grow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. With the kids, like you said, with relationships, it's hard. Because what I try and tell the kids that I'm dealing with in schools is, try and deal with it yourself first rather than waiting for the teacher all the time. So yeah, equipping them with those tools to be able to deal with the situation first. If it becomes too overwhelming for them, then what the next step is for them. So what kind of things do you teach your kids around safety, and what kind of things have you given them? What tools have you given them?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned there, just to be real secure in yourself, and that if people say things that upset you or hurt you, then, don't, and it's hard, and that's, I think, the first thing you say, because these are hard lessons that you're going to learn, but, trust yourself, trust who you are, and you can walk away from that, and you don't have to listen. And then I think the other bit that you were leading to is, and that's what we're here for, like parents and good role models that we hopefully have around our kids, so that we're not going to be there at the time that they're experiencing this, but you can always come to us, and that's what, I'm sure any good role model or good parent will always say to their kids is that, you can always talk to me, don't ever be, feel like it's too silly or trivial, or come talk to me, and then hopefully that's, if I were to be a best case situation, my son or daughter, if they're in that situation, I hope they deal with it as best they can, but then they come talk to me and tell me, and hopefully I can, then give them the advice to deal with it.
Absolutely, communication is definitely the key. There are kids out there that struggle to talk to their parents. So yeah, it's the, I suppose, the values that you're teaching at home, and will help your kids be able to open up. When your kids started school, did you ever worry about bullying, or did you ever worry about them being safe at school, especially when they were new going into school?
Yeah, a little bit. I suppose worry. I suppose that depends on your personality. I'm always quite a optimistic person, and I see the best in situations. So I think our kids go to Fitzroy School. I think we're lucky in this country. A lot of really good schools. I know there's some that struggle and don't provide the best experiences, but I look around where I am and feel very fortunate, and so I meet people at a school and I feel secure, and so I can honestly say when the kids went, I wasn't worried, but that doesn't stop you have that concern. And my wife, different personality, might answer that question differently, and it's more, I suppose I have a general concern and just around who my kids will socialise with and where that will lead. I think that's fair to say, and as I said before, just knowing that life's different than when I grew up, and we can talk about phones, and exposures and things that I don't have eyes on our kids all the time, and sort of who knows what they get up to, and so definitely that sort of feeling and constantly, I suppose, keeps you on edge as a parent, just to make sure you're always communicating with your kids, giving them those good lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back on your childhood, did you ever experience bullying or witness it? Or
yeah, I mean, it's around. It's interesting, and you know a lot more about this than me, but I think there's levels of it, correct? Like there's your teasing and that sort of banter, and I know in a sporting environment we used to always talk about this, and then but it can cross the line, absolutely, and I've seen it cross the line. I've definitely seen it cross the line around me, with other people. It probably has at times with me. I feel like, again, I was always in a position due to my upbringing that I could deal with that really well, and so I don't think I ever let it. I never took a lot of that to heart. I definitely experienced it where kids would sort of tease me, and maybe sometimes they were trying to get something more out of me, a different reaction. But I feel like I could always be pretty confident in who I was and walk away. And I had 2 older brothers and a dad mum that were really close to me, but on things like that, my older brothers and my dad, they were the ones I knew I could go talk to, and they'd they kept me pretty strong and resilient in the face of that sort of stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. That support system is very important. I look on my own experiences growing up. Like, I grew up with long hair. My parents didn't let me cut my hair, and that made me a target. So growing up back then, having long hair wasn't a cool thing. So that was the target for me, and why kids bullied me, especially both boys and girls. And yeah, I'm opposite to you. I didn't have that support by my brothers or my parents. They didn't really. I don't think they knew how to deal with that situation when I was bringing it to them. So yeah, that was what I found difficult, and why I'm so passionate now after teaching martial arts to kids, and why I like to spread this message about bullying, and especially for parents, because most parents don't know how to support their kids and what to do. I've had lots of parents that just go straight to the right. I'm going down to the school and I'm going to rip everyone's head off. Whoever's been touching my kid or that. So, which is the wrong thing to be doing. So, yeah. So, were there moments in school or rugby that you felt excluded or intimidated?
Again, not personally. I feel like my upbringing and probably the schools and my family schooling relationships I have were always pretty healthy and helpful. And again, I'll keep saying, like, I am grateful and fortunate for that. And I still saw, I realised, that's not the same for everyone. And I see it a lot growing up, the experiences of other kids that would go, shrink inwardly, and you talked about that, didn't have those outlets and people to talk to. So it was something I witnessed, but, fortunately for me, it wasn't something I experienced it a whole lot. I know even, starting on my sort of rugby journey, I wasn't big, and that, was tough. That was a battle, and, I used to get picked on a little bit for being the little guy, and almost, it was as if people try to exclude you, and that's sort of maybe how it developed, but I always sort of put my back up, and it was like, no, that motivated me. And again, that's come back because I think that strength from my upbringing to not take it to heart and not feel even smaller, but actually sort of puff my little chest out.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
I don't need to be big. I'll take you down, and then anyway, you end up growing, and that's what I think. Like, I had that through my whole rugby career. I just always felt like I was the little guy. Even when I was a bit bigger, I felt like I was the little guy trying to prove myself, and I almost played on that to motivate myself and give me a bit of energy. So I think that's the sort of way it played out in my life and sport and career anyway. Yeah,
I seen online someone did a podcast, and one of your mates was talking about when you did make the All Blacks, you weren't lifting the heaviest, you weren't, but one thing he said about you was your work ethic, and you always asked the right questions and making sure that whatever the coach said that you were doing it. So yeah, it was pretty cool to listen to that, that type of thing, especially for my kids as well, being able to watch someone like yourself that doesn't matter if you're the smallest in the team. It's how hard you work to get to where you want to go to.
And you use it. Like, I genuinely feel like that was my advantage, And in the end, a disadvantage that I was like, because I knew I wasn't big and strong, and especially in a sport like rugby, particularly as I arrived, there was a real emphasis on power, and we used to do all this testing, which they do now.
Absolutely.
And it was tough. Like, I still remember the days that they'd have strength testing. You always started with the strength testing when everyone was fresh, and your name's down the bottom each time, and then you'd go to power testing, and it would even be further down the bottom. There'd be even a bigger gap. Yeah. So, but then I'd get to fitness, and that was just, to me, that was just hard work. Yeah. And I'd be bang, my name would go back to the top, and so I'd use that. It was like, right, I know this is really hard for me. I'm not naturally strong and powerful, but it just motivated me to just every other thing which I can work on. Like, I'll be fit, I'll be smart, I'll work really hard on those other parts of my game, and if you've always got that, it's just continual motivation to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear, because when I was growing up, my nickname was Little Shane, because I was a little kid with long hair. But that's something I use as motivation to make myself better. And when I was fortunate enough to make the New Zealand Māori Rugby League team, first thing he said was, right, we're going to go and test your fitness. And I was like, oh no. So I totally hear So I've got a question here. Someone who has played at the highest level of sport, how did the culture around toughness, you basically spoke about that, sometimes cross the line into bullying? Because for me, I know that growing up in teams where it was very physical, and some of the wrestling that we had to do, going up against actually the bigger people, I got intimidated quite a lot because I wasn't as big as the other one. So how did you find that?
Yeah, I could see how that could happen. I reckon, especially in a rugby environment like that is a part of being the forwards. I felt like I was always happy I was in the backs, and that wasn't quite an emphasis. But I saw it particularly in some guys that were in the forwards, and it was almost that feeling like you got to win the battle, and all these catch cries, which you understand, but taken the wrong way, that can be tough. And I know I played with a few guys, but some that were really close mates that would just say, man, I wish I was in the backs, because they didn't have to feel like they were turning up to go to battle. Like I never had that sense like in rugby. Like I always knew, and I loved the physical side of the game, but I was outsmarting people, I was outworking people, I wasn't trying to bash over the top of them, or that wasn't my game. And whereas I think when you play in the forwards, almost it's forced upon you. But yeah, I think it goes back to that the thing right at the start. You just got to be really confident, and so it's harder. It's easier said than done. I know, but you got to know. So if someone's telling you got to win the battle, or you got to bash them, and that's not you. It doesn't have to be you. You just got to be really sure in yourself. And look, in sporting environments, that can be tough. But yeah, it just comes back to that real confidence you've got to have in yourself, and finding outlets to still talk about that stuff. And maybe it is, if you get that confidence just to talk to a coach and say, mate, that's not for me, but I'm still going to be a great player and work really hard, but I don't play rugby to win a battle.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I train in the mornings at Redemption, and the Taranaki Bulls come in and they do their training around about the same time, and some of the weights that those forwards are lifting, mate, I was like, unbelievable. The level that they've got to get to be able to play in the forwards. It's crazy. So rugby is seen as a great teacher of discipline and teamwork, but also sometimes tough environments for kids. As a parent, how do you spot the line between healthy competitiveness and harmful pressure?
Yeah, I actually think like that, taught in a good way, I think sport is great at teaching those sort of lessons, because I honestly feel like if you're pushing a kid or an athlete and you're not getting the best out of them, then that's not a good culture. Like all the time, and my experience in rugby teams, and particularly high performing rugby teams, you're empowering people. Like that's what a good culture will do. It makes you want to do things that you didn't think possible. And if you're pushing the wrong button of a kid, and you're asking him to and getting him into that uncomfortable environment where he's not doing what you want him to do, then that's the antithesis of that. It's the opposite, and he's gonna and that's honestly what I felt around. And again, these were high-performing teams that I was fortunate to be involved in, but it was very much around understanding the individuals and pushing those buttons that are actually going to make them love, the physicality of rugby. Because there's no hiding from that physicality, but there's absolutely different ways you can approach it. Like if you're not a combative person, like I may have never even clenched my fists ready to throw a fight, I'm the last, but I love the physicality of rugby. And I always get asked, like, that's really odd, that you're ready you love going to battle in a rugby field, but any sign of and even in rugby games I used to laugh, like an actual scuffle would break out and I'd be at the off camera laughing and sort of saying, what are you guys doing? So I sort of always understood that line, and that's what I believe sport's so good at, because especially for young men, we love contact. If you put us in a playground, we're going to fight with each other and play fight.
Absolutely.
But you got to that line you cross where it gets to aggression, where it's getting to where it's unwanted behaviour. That's crossing the line.
I was exactly the same too. Like, but when a scuffle broke out on the field, because I couldn't fight back then. I was like, wasn't confrontational or anything. I'd always stand back. And I remember one particular occasion, a whole team broke out in a fight, and I used to just stand back and watch. And it was like, well, and while they were having a fight, one of the team members in the other team looked back and see me standing and started running at me. I was like, no, I don't want any trouble, So I was exactly the same. And it wasn't until I started doing martial arts when I blew my knee out, is when I started to feel more confident within myself, and the teachings that martial arts gave me. And so that's why I'm big on empowering kids with that confidence, because some kids don't have the support or the confidence to be able to handle those situations. So
controlled aggression, martial arts, boxing. We used to do a bit of boxing, as training, and it's actually
that would have been interesting in that environment.
But it is, but it's hitting that same message, because boxing's amazing training.
It's a different type of fitness.
I prided myself on fitness, but I'd go 30-second sparring, I am absolutely dead.
That's crazy.
So, but that's controlled aggression and knowing where it is to cross the line, and I just think that's great for young people, but young me in particular. It's really, really important lessons and all of that.
Which I think is a good outlet for some of the kids that I'm working with currently in some schools. They need that outlet, to be able to hit something in a controlled environment like a pad or something, and then they're like, I feel better now. Rather than flipping a table and possibly hurt someone else. So but the All Blacks have a strong team culture. What lessons from that environment do you now apply with your family at home?
Good question. I think there's so many crossovers between high performance environments, so sporting environments over to family, even business now. You see more and more people from elite level sports, whether it's All Blacks, and they go in and sit in the boardroom and you'll talk about it, and you'll realise, man, that's exactly that. Those sort of performance under pressure, dealing with conflict, all those things that happen on a almost daily basis within a sporting environment, because it is high pressure, and you can live that out in a whole heap of walks of life. So look, in family, you realise the importance of communication. I think that's one thing that was really, really clear to me, and in a All Black environment, but also that whole finding ways to lift you up and empower people. I think that's the same in the family. You learn characteristics about my kids, my wife. You understand each other, and then it's finding ways to everyone be the best of themselves. That's how a team works, and whether that team is a family or a sports team or a boardroom company, that's what you got to do. You find, obviously, you sort of find the connected values, and you make sure you push them up so everyone's on a high. But that whole teamwork stuff is key. And like I say, like within an All Black environment, there's a magnifying glass on, because everything has to be 100%. You win on a weekend. If you don't, everything gets analysed, and that's a tough environment, but it leaves with you real key lessons that hopefully.
And I think having role, there's a role that family members play within the family, and sticking to that. If you're not playing your role within the team, you're not performing that role, then you soon get found out. And I think moving that over into families is sort of similar.
It is. You've got roles to play, and you got to be conscious of other people as well. There's even in a family, you have a lot in common, obviously, but still characteristics same in a team environment. And particularly within New Zealand, you had some, which is such a special part, the multicultural side of it. Realising how people react differently to pressure, how people, what gets them up is entirely different from one guy to the next, and they're great lessons.
So so looking back at the the Rugby World Cup, the first one that you guys won, 2011, probably one of the greatest sporting moments that I've ever witnessed. It was amazing. The pressure leading into that game, knowing that you lost Dan Carter, you lost Cruven. How were you able to handle, and the team was able to handle that type of pressure, especially the coaching staff, because man, they did phenomenal, being able to bring the players in that they needed to.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things that were preparation. Like if you prepare well, you can deal with pressure. Like it's the one thing, and that's something you can control. And so I think of 2011 and the preparation that we put in wasn't just on field; it was a lot of off field. You know, we got the rugby bit right, but we spent a lot of time, particularly because we'd failed 07, 03, all the way back to 87. We had lost World Cups, we All Black teams. The majority should have won. We're favourites. And so we actually looked at all that and said, what are we doing wrong? You know, because the rugby bit we're doing well, and we had up until 11 again, but we just spent a lot of time on, dealing with pressure. How do we deal with pressure? And if there was, one, there'd be a few things, but the one was just living in the now. Like that was a real catch call of the team, in the now. And I remember like being on the field in that final, and another player going down, and Steve Donald running out, and you absolutely, you sense the nerves, this energy in the stadium, but you just, like, I was so focused, and I'm sure, I know we all were. It's just like in the now, like what can you control? You can't. The guy's gone down. Another one, Dan's already in the stands. But I can't do anything about that. And the worst thing you can do in those moments is start, thinking about that. And that's when you get caught, and your mind, it doesn't focus. It's the opposite. And so what you want to do is just, what am I going to do right now? How am I going to help Stephen Donald play at number 10? Because I've been here all the time. I've got to do my best. And I'm not thinking about the result, the World Cup that's on the line. And this is, again, it's all easier said than done, but that's what living in the now is. And it's just each second, each minute, what you're going to do in that moment. And it helps. And it helps any pressure situation. There's always uncontrollables that are trying to come in and cloud you. And it's proven, like within your mind. We used to talk about this, the red head, when it's you're getting all these conflicting emotions. You're thinking in the future, you're thinking in the past, and what happens in a red head is you don't execute. You don't execute simple tasks. Suddenly catching a ball, and you see guys drop a ball that they catch 100 times in crucial moments. And so the opposite of that is the blue head, where you're living in the now, and you just push all that to the side. And then when that ball comes, you catch it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's how you just try and play through a game of 80 minutes, because it's just a game of 80 minutes.
And that's something you can use in life. Is not worrying about the past, not worrying about pressures. What are we doing now? That's gonna. And you talk about stuff like, I still say that to my son, like half in jest at the moment, and my daughter, like, because they'll get all worked up and something's going on. This happened. It's like, what's happening right now? Just control, and I won't use that language all the time, but it's the same principle. Just focus on what's right in front of you, and deal with that, and So that basically leads into the next question too, is because you were a part of one of the most successful teams in history. How did that environment cultivate empowerment and psychological safety?
I think it was all part of, like I said, we did a lot of work off the field. Around, I think that's quite specific, how you deal with moments in a game, but we absolutely spent a lot of time understanding who we were as All Blacks, and what that, again, because there's pressure that comes with that, because there's the expectation that you're going to have to win, and if you don't, what happens, the fallout and things like that. And same thing, you treat it by, right, each training you're going to be the best in the world each day, and then how do you to help with that, you've got to have a strong culture. You got to feel safe, you got to be comfortable. You don't want to be living on edge all the time. Like that was something I felt we did really well, because it's easy to be driving yourself for these huge standards that we wanted to live by, but you had to come down and relax and be mates, and we did that, man. Like, we had good fun. Like, it wasn't.
It looked like you had fun, man. It was awesome. I watched that documentary that you guys did after the World Cup, and I've watched it like a dozen times, man. It's so cool to watch. It just brings back all those emotions of the one, I remember watching it on my own in my lounge, and I felt like I was in the stadium. It was so cool. And what Stephen Donald, what he had to endure, after the Australian game,
Yeah.
when he didn't kick it out, and what he was copying online, what he was copying in the media, for him to come back into a team environment like that in the grand final and do what he did.
Yeah.
Man, you can tell that the work that you guys put in, the team put in with people coming and helping him with that psychological.
And like, welcoming him. Like he was, like, if you could pick a best team member, like in terms of just a guy that everyone enjoyed, everyone got on well with, it was him. And so, like that, even though the attacks, a lot of those were directed at him, that hurt us all. And,
absolutely.
So you couldn't have been happier like that if there was anyone to come on, kick a goal and win us
It was
a game.
him.
That it was him. There was something, really special in all of that. But also, the environment we create, because if he doesn't come back into a really special environment, that stuff would affect him, and he wouldn't have been able to do what he did. And so he always knew, like, those external attacks, there was nothing like that within the team. We were absolutely, like, we loved him, and he knew that, I think, and that's
that's cool.
Made him comfortable and do what he did.
Oh, that's really cool. So what can schools and teams or workplaces learn from the All Blacks approach to inclusion and mental strength?
Yeah, I think look, it's New Zealand's a special place of I'd say if not all the schools, there's a special multicultural aspect to our schools, and inclusivity helps. Like making people feel special, feel that belonging of a team brings out more in them, and if you can empower people, then that's what good living's all about, and then that's what schools should be fostering. And as I said earlier on, like, I think I see that happening all around. And there's no doubt you can do them better, and you can take lessons, whether it's from the All Blacks or other sporting teams. I think sporting teams are forced, because of the particularly elite level, they are forced to concentrate on it a lot. Schools, they're not in that position, thankfully. You don't want to be in. But that doesn't mean you can't take lessons from the ones that are under pressure and do it really well. I absolutely believe that there's a lot that schools can learn and continue to make kids feel comfortable. We're talking about bullying. Like, it starts with a kid that is the bully, and you don't get born a bully. No. So something's created there, and so we just got to keep creating environments, whether it's schools or families, that foster that belief and behaviour that doesn't breed bullies. So
exactly.
You just got to find different ways to push those buttons for people to be good people and be mates, not bullies. Yeah,
you're right, and people bully for a reason. They either be bullied themselves, or there's something else going on. So it's been able to identify that too. I don't only work with the kids that have been bullied, but I also work with the kids that are the bullies, because sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. Or some kids don't even know what is not bullying as well. So there's a lot of things you've got to unpack when you're working with the kids. So you played under intense pressure. What habits and mindsets helped you stay grounded, and how are you teaching those to your own children?
I think it's when I think of myself, like, my connection back to my family was always really, really important. I think of those environments, they are all-consuming. You're in an all-black environment, it's tough. You find ways, release valves during a camp or during a tour, which are really important, but nothing substitutes getting out of that environment and going back to your family and going back to your friends who are outside of that rugby bubble. And I know that's something I think I did more than most, and that probably is due to my the way I came into rugby was a little bit different in terms of, I was a full-time uni student right up till I was 21, so whereas most guys are sort of within the rugby pathway from a very young age, and now, you get guys 16, 17, they're in academies, and from then on they're looking at rugby, and whereas it was different for me, and so I think I always, any opportunity I could get, I sort of was quick to step out of that and stay grounded with friends and family that didn't really care that I was all black. They just wanted to know the kid that grew up in these parts of
really
Plymouth
cool.
and
Yeah,
what
that's
he
awesome.
was doing. So
Yeah.
that was a big part for me.
Okay, cool. So, as a dad yourself, what's your approach to supporting your kids in sport without pushing too hard or stepping in too much?
Yeah, I'm seeing that a lot now, and I think it's really easy for me at the moment because I try to think of what my parents did for me, and they were always there, always present, and that's often enough. You don't need to provide any more than that. Like I think back to my parents and how amazing they were, but what it went down to was just they were always there to watch. They were always there to support. They were always taking me to trainings and games, and that was enough. And there were definitely times I know, I can think back to times when I was a bit down and they'd pick me up, and or the opposite, and I was a bit high and they'd sort of, but it was no big speech or special words. Like I don't remember the word, I just remember them being there and talking to me, and so I think, without being critical, but I see a lot of parents that, look man, are real good intent and really involved, but look, the kids will be kids, and as long as you just support them and let them develop themselves, then I think that's the most you can do, and that's what I try to do with my kids.
Nice, that's cool. So this question is going to be a good one. So what do you say to a parent on the sideline worried that their children is being left out, picked on, or not enjoying the game anymore?
That's a good question. Well, if they're worried that maybe they're not enjoying the game, like that's a hard one, because you don't want to force it. Like there are kids that some sports resonate with kids that don't. Like I loved rugby, and I loved all sports. There was something, and I think it was the physicality and me trying to prove to bigger kids that I was, still deserved to be there. Yeah. Something about it clicked with me, but I think, what it comes back to is what's the kid enjoying? Like, you got to make sure it's an environment that he enjoys, and if he's genuinely not enjoying it, like I'm still a big believer in sport, but it might be another sport that they want to identify with and really enjoy. But I don't believe in pushing kids too hard, but there's a lot to be said around encouraging them and being involved with them. Like I don't think, if your kid's not enjoying it, maybe look at your own involvement. Are you just dropping them off and then driving away? I see that a lot.
I see a lot of that with martial arts too. Like parents are dropping little Johnny off to learn martial arts, and then they're leaving and they're not involved in the learning process, and expecting little Johnny to go home and practice on his own. I see a lot of that. The involvement. And
even just like we're busy people, you might not be able to stay for a training, but when you pick them up at the end, you got to ask them about it. And look, there's been studies done, and they've asked kids all the things what they enjoy most about sport, and almost expecting the tries that are scored or when you win the game, but it's compliments from parents. It comes back, and this is done thousands of kids, and they all come back. So that little, man, you played a good game today. And if it's a kid, not your own dad, try and do that. If you're a parent and another kid's playing well, to go up and say that's huge for a kid. And I know probably adults know that yourself. You think back to when you were a kid, and if my mate's dad said, "Geez, Conrad, you played really well," like, man, that's...
You remember that, eh?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. and for me, I try and talk to kids, especially around rugby, and just say hello and say, "Hey, your game's going." I always like to do that because I always remember the adults that used to do that, take the time and talk to me and see how my games were, and I always remember that. So I try and do the same thing, especially for our young ones. But you're right about making sure that you ask those questions if you can't be there, because everyone's busy these days.
Be interested. You can't just expect them to just love a sport out of nothing. Like kids follow their parents, kids follow their role models. So you've got to be actively involved and interested, and if you understand, not everyone can coach and things like that, but there's still a lot of other ways you can channel that genuine interest in what your kid's doing.
Over the years of me teaching martial arts with kids, I've taught thousands of kids, and there's only been 38 kids that have actually made it to black belt. That's taken that 5 to 6 year journey and become a black belt, I've always asked a couple of them, and I've caught up with them again, you know, so what was, you know, your drive to get the black belt?
What made
Most
you
of,
stick at it?
and they always come back to my parents, the support of my parents. If it wasn't for them,
You
then
wouldn't have.
I wouldn't be there. And one particular student, she said she did nursing and applied for a job up in Auckland, and all they were talking about in her CV was getting her black belt and that stickability that she had. And she said it was actually quite cool to, you know, not talk about the job, but they wanted to talk about my journey. So yeah, but no, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for this. I've just got a couple of quick fire questions I wanna ask you. This is what my wife put on here. So, what's more stressful, a Rugby World Cup quarter final or a kid's birthday party with 15 sugar-loaded 5-year-olds?
Stressful? Yeah, I think the party was stressful. Because of the unknown, like rugby game, look, you know, it would be a bit of stress at the start of it, and then I'd be like, right, I know what I'm doing. I actually used to get really relaxed before big games because of that preparation thing. I'd feel, but how do you prepare for a birthday party? I think.
With 15 of them, I mean, who invites 15 kids to a birthday?
Yeah, what they're going to do, though, some of them are happy and some are
Yep. All right, I've got another one. If you could ban a parenting phrase forever, what would it be?
Oh, I'm sure there's a few.
Well, one of the ones that my wife said was, because I said so. Because I said so.
Yeah, that would be up there. I was trying to think of some of the ones from that I hear on the sidelines that I think can be a lot more constructive. Anyone coming to mind?
That's a tough one, eh?
Yeah. Smash them on the rugby field.
Oh.
That's probably one I'd like to get rid of.
Yeah, that's one. Like, I coach my kids' rugby league team and my son's rugby team for Clifton. And last year at the closing tournament, we played old boys in the semi-finals.
Yeah.
And it was try for try. It was very close. It was only year 3, so they're like 8-year-olds. And on the sideline, the parents were yelling out, "Smash him, smash him." I stopped the game. I was like, stop the game. I said, parents, they're only kids. Stop the smash them. You know, there's no need for it.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with you that, especially for a kids game. Yeah, it's terrible. All right, I've got another one for you. Have you ever found yourself saying something your parents used to say and instantly regretted it?
And regretted it?
Yeah.
Oh, probably. You put me on the spot here. What was that one you said? I told you so. Well, because I said so.
Yeah, because I said so.
I know my parents used to say that. It's often, you know, you can't justify it anymore. And you just get to that point and they're asking you, and often they're legitimate questions, and you're just sort of like, because I said so. And that's all you've got to fall back on. So I try not to end up there, but I still do.
Yeah. So last one. This is the last one, I promise. Who throws a better tantrum, your kids or a professional rugby player who gets subbed off?
Well, geez, when I get subbed off, I throw a pretty good tantrum. Oh, still kids though. I've had a couple with my own. I shouldn't be saying this, but because we used to fly, obviously when we were living in France, putting kids through 30-hour travel from New Zealand up to France, pretty good one. But my daughter, as we were coming into land, undid her seatbelt and stood up, and that's what the tantrum was that bad.
Yeah.
We actually had to do it. And, we had the air hostess coming down on us. It was just a full noise because she was yelling at us in French, and it sticks out. It's really haunts me, that experience. But that was worse than anything I've done when I got subbed off.
I remember the halfback for the All Blacks. He's a commentator now.
The halfback?
He's
Justin Marshall.
Justin Marshall. Yeah, I remember him talking about on a podcast that he did that. He got subbed off. Actually, he wasn't starting, and they didn't bring him on until the second year. He was like, "No, I'm not going on." He's like, "No, I'm not going on." You threw a tantrum, and then end up getting dropped.
It still happens. Footballers are good at that.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing that I used to hate was we'll do a haka before a game. You get so fired up after the haka, and then you got to go sit down on the bench. That's the worst thing.
I've done that a few times.
You just get so fired up to get out there and play, and you got to go sit down and watch. But anyway, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this is the first one that we've ever done, and how awesome to get an All Black legend to come in and be the first person that we interview for Empowering Tamati.
appreciated all the work you're doing and the messages you're sending. It's we need more of it.
Awesome.
Cheers, man.
Thank you, sir.